Greetings everyone, this is Payment Mouse, your host, your friend and coach. Today, I have another great special episode with my new good friend, Austin, from the US. I met him like, 2-3 weeks ago at an event not far from here, the meetup, and we connected. At first I wasn't thinking much of it, but then as he started telling me a story with so much in common that we ended up chatting for like a few hours. We had a beautiful, not only conversation, but also amazing food, South African place. Yeah. And I knew that I had to bring him in on the podcast to share his story. His story is truly not just inspiring, but also a goosebumps story. And I would tell you that we will be doing more than one episode to even scratch the surface. He just released one book, and I think you have two more in the queue now coming in about your story. So yeah, that's what we're going to be unpacking. We'll see how much of that we can unpack today. So, Austin, welcome, my friend, to the show.
Thanks for having me, Lorenzo. Yeah, we met at just across the street at a bar, as all great stories start.
Not just a bar, it was in a meetup. Let's not give the wrong idea.
And then we scheduled just another conversation afterwards to just to meet up and get to know more about ourselves over dinner. And yeah, we hung out for 3 hours over dinner, just sharing our stories.
Yeah. So yeah, first of all, tell us, for people who don't know you, we're going to talk about your story and all that good stuff in a moment. But people who don't know you, tell us, who's Austin as a man, as a human being?
Yeah,
in a nutshell.
In a nutshell, I'm a person, I'm a Christian, I'm a traveler. I like your question because in the US, most people don't ask that question. They don't ask, who are you? They ask, what do you do? As if our personal identity is defined by what we do. And not just defined by what we do, but what our job is. And what our job is defined, a lot of the times, it's paid towards, it's linked towards our pay or our income status. And so who am I? I'm just a person living on this earth. I'm trying to make connections with people. That's who I am. In the past, I worked in government for over a decade, at all levels of government in the U.S., except for the federal level of government. But I did work with the feds before. But I've worked in local, regional, state levels of government, and I did that for a long time. I have a master's degree in planning, and I'm an analyst. My mind is very analytical, and that does have its drawbacks. I tend to get into analysis paralysis a lot. But I guess as a segue into my story, I was married briefly, and my wife passed away. And so actually in the same week, I lost my house and I lost my wife, all within the span of the same week. Yeah. And so now I'm basically traveling, but I'm not a digital nomad like most people assume. I actually went to Cambodia to try and arbitrage my life to see if I could continue working like a remote job, maybe work for an NGO over there, getting paid a foreign salary, living in a cheap place, and in my free time, helping out in some do-gooder cause. But it turns out that after all these interviews, I was just writing my own story and writing my book and fashioning previous journal entries, diary entries, and a lot of my thoughts and reflections into book format. So that's what I've been doing the last couple of years after my wife passed away. And I finished writing the book. I came over to Vietnam where I met you. And yeah, now I'm here having finished writing the book and trying to figure out what that next chapter literally is. Whether the next chapter of my life is writing the next chapter of the next book or moving on into other things.
Wow, powerful. So we're going to unpack all of that. First of all, thank you for coming here, for sharing your story and telling me your story. But 2 weeks ago was you shared some really personal things. Thank you. And we can do an entire episode just on that alone. So that said, we're going to do more than one episode. There's so much that we can unpack. So yeah, as I told you guys, it's going to be a pretty good one. A really good one, actually. So, but before we get into that, what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask you a series of rapid fire questions to further get to know you as a person. Ready?
Okay.
All right,
How long should each response be? Should it be numbers or time-wise?
Nah, it's just, well, it's a rapid fire series, so I give it in a nutshell.
Okay.
So what I've had people take 20 minutes to tell me their life stories,
Okay.
and so we're not looking into that.
Nope,
But yeah,
nope.
just keep it
I'll
short, sweet,
I'll
to the
leave it
point.
to one sentence, two sentences.
Yeah, exactly. So tell us, what makes you happy?
Being around other people makes me happy.
What makes you smile?
Being around other people who smile, and being in the sun.
Oh yeah, that's important. Now, let's take the happiness factors a couple of notches higher. What makes your heart sing, and what sets your soul on fire?
What makes my heart sing? I think is being around other people who have the same cause or identify with the same kind of goals and values as me. And what makes my heart go on fire? I don't know yet. I think in a bad sense, I guess for fire it would be like bad things, like bad urban planning.
Now listen, but what sets your soul on fire?
On fire? Oh, in a good way. What
Exactly.
lights
Lights you up.
Okay, the opposite of that would be good urban planning. I would be like, they have built this city correctly. You know?
Oh, yeah.
Things just happen without any problems. So good urban planning.
Awesome. Now, what, on the other side, what makes you sad and angry?
I think what makes me sad is people that just have like a woe is me or a woe is the world. But you really can't fix the world, so that makes, you can start with yourself. So sometimes it makes me sad that people think that we can change the whole world starting today, but we gotta start with ourselves.
Absolutely. What scares you?
What scares me is being like unmarried actually. Alone.
Really?
Yeah, alone and unmarried for the rest of my life scares me. Obviously, I'm by myself and I'm single right now, so that doesn't necessarily mean I'm scared, but that thought
Growing
scares
old?
me. Yeah, that scares me.
Okay. Now, what would you say is your personal number one superpower?
My personal number one superpower is I have a crazy sense of smell. Like I can smell anything. Like years ago, I was in Hoi An, and I could smell the fish market from 1 kilometer away. And the closer I got, the more I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta hold it in. But I have a really strong sense of smell. And it's not just that, I can smell the metal in bloods as well.
Damn.
Yeah.
So as a investigator, as a
I'd be
detective,
a dog sniffer basically. I'd be your
even for
dude.
fashion, like developing perfume in a sense.
Yeah.
Wow, awesome. Now, when was the last time that you had those kind of laughs that really made your cheeks hurt, rolling on the floor because you're laughing too much and give you stomach because you're laughing so hard?
I don't think I've had it in a while, but I think seeing my wife laugh as we were playing a game, and it was actually, I was making a joke, and here in Vietnam, Hue is pork, right? So I made a joke that I was like, instead of saying what the hell, you know what they say in Vietnam is what the hell.
Really?
Yeah, as a joke. So she laughed like crazy, and then her sides were aching, and then that made me laugh. So that was the last time I had like a really, really good laugh. Yeah.
That's sweet, that's precious. What is one thing that you used to value that you don't value anymore?
Yeah, going back to that urban planning thing, like I have a master's in urban planning, so I used to value really well-planned cities that are well-zoned, regulated efficiently. I don't value that as much anymore, just because you can't control everything. That's what I've learned. And so sometimes you need a little bit of messiness for that organic stuff to rise to the top.
Cool. Now, what is one thing that you did not value before, but now you value more and more with time?
I don't think before I valued, like I mentioned, I'm a Christian, but I didn't value sharing my faith. Only because growing up in the West, you're like, oh, you keep your politics and religion to yourself, right? But actually, if it's a core part of who you are, whatever it is, you should be able to share it freely, without care of what other people are thinking. And so that's something that I value more, is just sharing my faith and my story. That's a big change that happened, I think, post the passing of my wife. Yeah.
Makes sense. Now, let's move forward. You enjoy traveling, don't you? We can do the episode on traveling, and we'll do that another time, but I'd like to take you down a different type of travel, down memory line. Go back when you were growing up as a kid. You know, when kids, people around us, family, relatives, teachers, neighbors, ask you in this case, hey, Austin, what do you want to become when you grow up? What was your answer to that as a young boy?
I wanted to be a fireman like most people. Yeah. Just, but I do remember I wrote I wanted to be a postman. I don't remember what grade it was. It was in elementary school, and we were supposed to write like a one-page on what we wanted to be when we grew up. And I wrote a whole bunch of things, but the one thing I remember writing was like I wanted to be a postman.
Okay. So
that I could walk around, because I loved walking. And as I'm walking around doing something I enjoy, I can also read like the stories and postcards of where other people are going. So that's one thing that I was like an idealized dream job for me as a kid, was being a postman. Just carrying a bag, walking around, delivering postcards to the neighborhood, saying hi to people.
Beautiful. Growing up, what was your relationship with school? Did you love school or hate school?
School, I lived 3 blocks from my school. It was just a thing. I wasn't a good student. Yeah, I wasn't really a good student. I read for funsies, but then when they were assigned readings, I would never read the assignments.
Yeah.
Even if they were both like juvenile fiction. I would read on my own, but I wouldn't read whatever they gave me.
So you mentioned that you're not a good student. What was your favorite subject?
I've always liked history growing up. I didn't have a favorite subject per se in elementary school, but I think growing up I've liked history. That's like my favorite subject.
And was there any subject you could not stand?
I was not really good at learning languages. Like, we started learning Spanish, I think, in 2nd or 3rd grade, and I was already really bad. My mind is not good at that kind of stuff.
Yeah. You mentioned one thing that really stood out, especially here, that you say that you were not good in school. And coming from an Asian kid, it's hard to believe, because in my school, everyone I know, Asian kids were some of the best, brightest kids in the school. So when you were going to school and not the best, at least in terms of grades, were you getting some heat from your parents? And
yeah, I got whooped, of course. But I always knew I was not the best student, nor the best Asian student, nor the model Asian kid either. Most Asians growing up in first-generation households, they know they get compared with all the other. Yeah, well, like, look at Bobby, or not Bobby, whatever his name is, but
Chili boy, whatever.
Yeah, whatever. Look, he got all straight A's. What about you? You got like an A- or B+. But for me, if I got an A-, I'd be like, hallelujah. Because I'll tell you this, I was so bad as a student in college, I was perfectly happy with a 3.0 out of 4 in college, because I thought a 3.0 was like a B. I thought it was a solid B+. But then it didn't hit me until the end of my 2nd year of college when I did the math. Literally, 3 out of 4 is 75%, which is a solid C. So it took me 2 years of college to realize that, oh damn, I'm like a solid C student. But I also wasn't putting in any effort. So after I realized that, then I was like, man, I'm here to be a student in college. I need to actually be a student. So I tried really hard to get my A-, but I couldn't pull myself up because I had been not studying, basically. I had not been prepared for tests. So all the 3.0s that I got, all the B- that I got, were just due to not reading, not studying, not doing anything beyond what was required of midterms, basically.
But look at the bright side, if you're able to pull C's with basically strict minimum.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow, awesome. So imagine that we were in school in the same class in grade 10, 11. What kind of kid were you back then? Were you the shy one, quiet one,
I was
chatty, the superstar?
I was the interloper, I'm an extrovert, and so I would actually, as an interloper, you're either super popular in high school or you don't fit. And so I didn't fit because I wanted to hang out with everybody. But my high school was super cliquey in 10th and 11th grade. And I went to a middle school that did not feed into my high school. So the majority of the people at the high school in freshman year already had their crew.
Sure.
And I didn't come in with my crew. Like my crew, majority of my crew went to the other high school. So I had to kind of make my way, but they were kind of already like cemented into their own cliquey statuses. So, you know, I hung out with everybody. I hung out with actually people a year older than me. And then after they graduated, I was like, oh man, who am I gonna hang out with now? So I actually did get into a fight. Like, I beat up like the high school bully.
Nice.
Yeah, because I was getting bullied by him one time. And the girl behind me in math, I was like, why do you let him bully you like that, you know? I was like, yeah, right.
Come on, Bruce Lee.
That's right. My name is Lee. And her last name was Lee too.
Oh, wow, okay.
So afterwards, I was like, you're right. Because he stole my calculator, right? And he etched his name into my calculator. So I was like, nah, that guy's name is not on my stuff. So I got up and I just like beat the crap out of him. And after that, he didn't mess with me anymore. He was pretty silent. Yeah, that's like a proud moment.
So did you get the girl?
Huh?
Did you get that girl?
No, I didn't get the girl.
Speaking of girls.
But I laid the law down, and after that, I don't think he really bullied people after that because no one expected me to be the person to do that, and actually had parents call and leave messages and say, hey, I don't condone fighting, but what you did was good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of girls, were you popular with girls in school, like high school and college and stuff?
I don't think in high school, because high school was a very cliquish, but I did say, I don't know if it's because I was a new guy within the group. In my freshman year in high school, a lot of girls asked on behalf of their friends, hey, would you like to go out to the dance with my friend? But for me, I was just like not interested. Because even at that age, I was like, this is all puppy love, it's not going to lead to anything, I'll just wait till college. And then when I got to college, I also once again hung out with a lot of people. And I feel like, and I did a lot of one-on-ones like we're doing right now. Like that's my preferred mode of I think communication, just one-on-one chats like this. And I did a lot of that, and I think I got the feeling, no one ever told me this, but I think I got the feeling that a lot of girls felt like I was trying to like suss them out or figure out what they're all about for this hidden agenda of trying to ask them out. But that actually wasn't my agenda. I just wanted to do what you're doing right now and get to know people, yeah. And so I think somehow word got around that after some time, like I was only able to get these appointments. I don't want to call them dates, but I was only able to get these one-on-one appointments with other guys. So my thought is that at some point, maybe the girls huddled together and like, hey, this is awesome, guys, like not serious, right? But really, I was never serious or intent on dating. I just wanted to get to know people.
Were you into sports?
Yeah, I played soccer
Nice.
up until high school, and every season I would get knocked out and lose consciousness. And this is before, you know, getting concussed was like a medical term. And so my dad pulled me out because he was like, I'm not having this like everywhere.
What kind of, well, I call it football, but
Yeah.
you know, what kind of football were you guys playing? Were you playing almost like a
I was
rugby style?
I was just very aggressive because I was defense. So I was either the center or the sweeper, so captain on the back. And so basically, if anything fails, it's me. And I was just really aggressive too. You know, like I beat up the high school bully, right? So there was a lot of close fights that I got into in soccer as well too. But the times where I was knocked unconscious, it was just me being too aggressive, and I would fall usually and it hit the back of my head. Somehow I always landed on the back of my head whenever I fell, and then I would just like get knocked out and pass out, and then I would have to stay at home for like a few days to recover and, you know, miss school. So my dad was like, we're not having you play soccer anymore. So basically, once I got to college, I stopped playing any organized sports. Yeah.
Now, moving forward, what was your very first job? Do you remember how much you got paid the first time you worked?
Yeah, so my first job would have been an internship. I actually never worked food service. That's just the way it is. Like, my dad was like, you're not working food service. I didn't raise a child to work at McDonald's kind of thing, right? So, but you know, working at McDonald's gives you certain qualities, right?
Sure.
But no, my first job would have been at an internship with the Secretary of Education in California. And that was my first job, obviously unpaid. And I remember sometimes I would take breaks and I would like go on to AIM, like AOL Instant Messenger, and chat with people. And then when I would hear someone coming, because I was at the intersection of the hallway, you know, the worst location for the intern, I was like, oh no, switch the thing. And then one time I got caught, But then they were like smiling, like you're smiling right now. And like I think they knew, and I think yeah. But now that I look back, I think they were under 30, so I don't think they were that much older than me. But you know, as like a 16, 17-year-old, anyone above like 22 is like super old. And so they actually invited me to go out to a soccer game too, right? But I was like too afraid to go with them. And so that's one of the things where, yeah, I think if I had been a little bit more mature or aware of what the working world was like, that I probably would have hung out with them and maybe deepened that into a friendship. But as that was my first job, I was like, no, I'm here purely for work and to file and to respond to letters, you know, on behalf of the secretary and all that stuff. And yeah, so that was my first job. I think it was a good first job experience because it was at such a high level of government. Yeah.
Cool, awesome. Now, moving forward, how would you describe your path from the moment you left school to now? Would you say once you get into one lane, it was smooth sailing, it was set for life, it was more like a roller coaster turns and ups and downs?
Yeah, it was roller coasters, ups and downs. You go back,
sideways,
backways, you're at the start again, and then you make another loop and you're at the start again. You're like, didn't I just do this route and circuit? I graduated and I took a year off just to like do nothing and to hang out. You know, in like the UK or Australia, they would call it a gap year, but I didn't travel anywhere. So actually my senior year in college is when I studied abroad and lived in Singapore. And then I came back and I wanted to spend a year in San Diego because I didn't get to spend it with any of my university friends. And I had a few people inquire if I wanted to work for them for paid internships in the urban planning arena, but I was like, I kind of made excuses against saying, nah, like I don't think I'm qualified for this, mainly because like I didn't want to drive to where these places were, and mainly because I just wanted to go to the beach and hang out and have fun and reconnect with the people that I didn't have these relationships with my last year of college. But that was actually a fatal mistake, because if I had gotten that internship, I probably would have lined me up for a job there. But because I took this year off, after a year, I did a 2-year program for a master's, but I actually transferred. So I signed up for a 2-year master's program, but I transferred, and then I had to do another like half year, I think, at another school. So by the time I graduated, it was the thick of the recession.
2008?
Yeah, end of 2009 actually.
Okay.
So if I had gone straight, it would have been before 2008. So basically all my friends that graduated, anyone that had a job in 2006 or 7 would have been already golden with jobs lined up, secure, right? But because I took this 1 year off, that actually necessarily pushed me back into the same career path and same career stage as people like 5-6 years younger than me. So I worked like every year and a half I took a new job. And not because I wasn't qualified, but because I was bored of the work and I wanted a higher pay. So I went like this, zigzagging, 10 years before the kids today are doing it that way. And so at every single interview, they'd always be like, well, I'm looking at your interview and it looks like you're working all over the place. And I would always have a ready script for that. And it's like, look, you've been working at your agency for 10 years and you've only had one job. Maybe you've had 2 or 3 positions, but you've only had one job. But me, in 2 or 3 years, I worked 2 or 3 different positions with 2 or 3 different companies. So actually, in a sense, you could look at me as a consultant for the government. And so I bounced all over the place. So to get back to your original question, it was definitely a roller coaster. It wasn't a straight line from point A to point B, but I picked up a lot of experience, working experience through this method, and also moving around to different places in the US. I've lived in different places in the US because I was like, this job looks interesting. I don't really care about the place, but I'm going to go here because I like the job. And then I lived in a different part of the US.
Awesome. Speaking of moving around, you mentioned taking a year off. That's something that not many people, especially younger people in North America, do. Whereas in Europe and Australia, it's pretty common, especially after high school, because, and I was always something that more and more students would do, because when you're 17, 18, 19, you don't know what you want. Go travel, go find yourself.
Yeah.
And so I really like that you did that. But why Singapore?
So I think I wanted to go to a place that was a mixture of Eastern and Western cultures. So originally I was considering between Istanbul
Oh yeah.
and Singapore, but I'm actually allergic to nuts, so I couldn't do Turkey because they just have nuts in everything.
Absolutely, yes.
So then it ended up being Singapore.
So you stayed 1 year in Singapore?
Yeah.
What were you doing there?
I mean, I was there at uni, but I was also very highly embedded into the local culture. So I didn't hang out with the Americans that, I came in with and matriculated with. I think there was like 40 of us from the University of California, but I spent very little of my time with them. I spent it all in hall with the local university folks.
What was the thing that really surprised you the most positively about Singapore?
Surprisingly, it's the food. Like, I did not like spicy food back then, but I ended up enjoying the spicy food, and so that's the thing that caught me off and was surprisingly good.
How different did you find? That's one of the first things that touched me, not touched me, but really surprised me. When I went to China, I lived in China for a few years. Chinese food in China was completely different than Chinese food in Canada and the US.
Yeah.
I guess the same in Singapore, right?
Yeah.
How did you react when you saw that, hey, the food that so-called Chinese is going to be different than Chinese food back in California?
Yeah, I mean, China has like a whole bunch of different regions, so each region's flavor is going to be different from the next region. And what we have in North America is like Cantonese style cuisine, because the people that came over and did the gold mining and the gold digging and building the railroads in North America, they came from Guangdong, and so that has a very particular style of cooking. And the people that migrated to like Southeast Asia, like Singapore and Kuala Lumpur, they came from a different province, and so their food is different than the Chinese food in North America. And so, I grew up thinking Cantonese food was the best because I grew up in a neighborhood where like 90% of the Chinese people were of Cantonese descent, right? But if you ask other people from other parts of China, they'll probably think like Cantonese is very bland because the style of cooking is just natural flavors. They don't put spice. Like salt is like, that's it. Salt and soy sauce, right? They don't even do pepper.
Absolutely. One thing that is a tradition, I don't know in California, but in Canada, I speak to Toronto, when you go to a Chinese restaurant, at the end they always bring you fortune cookies.
Yeah.
In China, they don't.
Yeah.
So when I first went to China, and I said, what's fortune cookies? What do you mean? What is that? We don't know that. I told them, they said, well, we don't have that. So did you experience the same in Singapore?
No, they don't do fortune cookies because the way they have their food set up, primarily you eat at like outdoor food centers. So ain't nobody got time for that to give you like a little fortune message and a little cracker. Like go on and move to another place.
Winning lottery number is this.
Yeah, no, they don't have that. Like maybe at the actual proper fine dining restaurants they might. I have no idea, but I never ate at those kind of restaurants at my budget level when I lived.
Yeah. Awesome. Moving forward now. There's a saying that says, change your story, change your life. And by story, I mean what you tell yourself in your head and along. So when you're at your lowest, how do you change your story internally to change your reality externally?
Yeah. So the way I do it is I look at it like the multiverse, right? Or alternate dimensions. And I grew up reading comic books, right?
Yeah.
But that's the backstory to that. But nowadays people do, because we're filming this the day after Easter, a lot of people do these Easter egg hunts looking for these little nuggets of random info in their Marvel, movie, in their DC movie, or in some other like Angels and Demons movie, some other sci-fi movie, vampire movie, zombie movie, what have you, right? And people spend a lot of time dissecting all these things from like the Star Wars universe or the Star Trek universe or what have you. But all that is fantasy, right? And a lot of the times people are kind of hung up about these questions, and then the writer of the screenplay, the director or whatever of this movie will be like, we didn't say it in the movie, but yeah, to answer your question, this is actually the answer to your question for this science fiction fantasy thing. But we don't live in a science fiction world, even though we have a lot of tech around us. We don't live in a fantasy world, even though we might have a lot of fantastical dreams. We live in the real world. So I can change me, I can change my story. And to your point, if I'm going down a path that I don't really like, I kind of look at my backstory to see how I got here and see which decisions were the crucial decisions that led me to this current point. Then I imagine what it might have been But I don't see. I do that even before I make my decisions. So as I told you, I'm like an analyst and I overthink things. And so I've noticed that as the years have progressed, I've gotten a little bit too analytically inclined. But yeah, to your point, I changed my story, and that's how I changed my life. And I didn't expect your question, but that's exactly what I do. Is like when I don't like the narrative of my own life, not what people are telling me, not what I'm hearing from the street, but when I don't like a narrative that I'm going through, I look at my own story and be like, if this is what I want, then this is what I need to change. And I just do that.
That's a great way to look at it. Yes, yes, yes. Now let's talk about something that has been a very important part of your life. You mentioned your wife. How did you guys meet?
Yeah, so we actually met in Iceland. And yeah, we met in Iceland. And we met like on a road trip. Yeah.
So prior to the trip, you guys did not know each other. How did that happen? Well, that was the story the first time you guys met.
Yeah, so I was, in the US, and I was going to Iceland, and I used the couch surfing app to see if there were any couch surfers that wanted to do a road trip across Iceland. And I was like, hey, I'm interested in renting a car, and I want to see if people want to join me. We can split the costs. And then someone responded and was like, hey, we actually already are renting a car for this period. Do you want to join us? So I was like, sure, I'll join you guys. It was a married couple. So I was like, yeah, I'll join you guys. And then like a few days before the trip, they texted me like, hey, is it okay if someone else joins us? And I was like, wow, they're asking my permission to join their rental car, right? So I was like, of course, it's just your car. So they're like, great. So they told me that, you're staying at a hostel, we'll have this girl meet you at your hostel. So I didn't know Anna, which was my wife's name. I didn't know her or see her. I had no idea what she looked like prior to me meeting her. It was just, this couple told me, we'll pick you up at the hostel and we'll send the other girl to your hostel in advance, and then when you guys are both there, we'll come by and swing by and pick you guys up. So like that's kind of how I met her. So you can say we found each other via an app if you wanted to be technical, but we weren't like looking for dating partners. It was just using like the power of the internet 2.0, I guess you could call it, to put people together. Yeah, so she was looking for the same thing. She was looking for people to road trip with. And I was looking for people to road trip with. This other people were also looking for road trip buddies, and that's just kind of how we met in Iceland.
So when did you know that, hey, she's different?
Right off the bat.
Really?
The moment I met her.
What was about her that made you feel, hey, she's different?
Well, she had a presence. Like, she walked in through the door, and it was like a movie, because I could look out into the landscape because there was a window behind the reception desk, and I was sitting on the opposite side. So as she was walking up, even before I saw her, I heard her. I heard the rattling of these metal steps, just rattle, rattle, rattle. And then I saw her walking up these steps as a black figure. And when the door opened, this whoosh of wind came in. Some flurries came in, It wasn't snowing, but it was just a little bit flurry. So that came in. She closed the door behind her, and she just heaved, and like as she breathed out and exhaled, like the whole room kind of like was sucked into her presence. So immediately, I was already keyed in to look for this person who I didn't know what they looked like. But when I saw this person, walk in, she captured my attention immediately. And the moment she just sat down and started talking with me, it was an all-engrossing conversation. And I think she was very similar. I've turned more like her in the sense that before I always wanted to have one-on-one conversations. Now that's like my number one priority. But she actually did what you're doing right now, which is these rapid-fire questions to a stranger, right? Like she was no holds barred questions, right? Just asking really deep, really personal. And it's like, are you sure you want to do this? Like, we're going to be stuck in a car together. You don't want to like ease into this. But she went straight on and, hit the nail with the hammer right on the head, which was me. And so that's really kind of what caught me and my entire attention.
Beautiful. While you're talking, a couple of things came to mind. I'm going to ask you two questions. You'll be very personal enough to answer, but I just want to share one. Imagine if Anna was here today. What's one question you really want to ask her?
And the second question?
Second question was, what do you think that she would ask you if she were you?
I could say the answer to your second question is like, why are you still here? Why haven't you moved on with your life? Like, I told you to move on with your life. Why are you writing a book about me, talking about me?
Oh, wow.
So that's that. Then the first question, what was your first question again?
What would you ask her if she?
Oh, what would I ask her? I probably would have asked her. Well, see, I already asked this question. There's nothing I would have asked. But I did ask her, like, after we got married, like, why didn't you take certain steps to avoid cancer or to mitigate the cancer? And you know, she was on her own spiritual health guru journey, right? And that didn't work out for her. So there's nothing I would ask her now because we already asked ourselves all the questions. But that was a big question that I asked, not before we got married, but actually after we got married. Yeah.
That's powerful. Thank you for sharing that. So, how long after you guys met that you knew she was the one and that you proposed her?
I think I didn't know it at the time, but in reflecting and looking at my past journal entries, because you know, the book, it's technically a memoir because it's compiled of entries that I've already written in the past that I've supplemented. I didn't realize it back then, but I already liked her back then. I just didn't realize it. When I look at the pictures, when I look at what I was writing, and even the couple that we traveled with were like, these two are going to get married one day. And
wow,
so they even took a picture of us where I'm proposing to her. But I'm not actually proposing to her on the mountain, right? You know how nowadays with big old proposals, you got your like one friend that's like hiding around in like a bush, you know, and trying to take pictures of you? So that's what they were doing. And it looks like I was proposing to Anna on this mountainside, down on one knee, and she was standing. But actually I was like trying to climb up the mountain because she was already like 50 feet in front of me. And I was like so scared. And I was like, you know, I can't let her be this far ahead of me. But I already liked her back then. And me being an analytical, practical person, I was like, how is this going to work? She's just someone that I met, you know, abroad. I lived abroad before, studied abroad. I've met tons of people. Like, so I was like, this is just not going to work out. Even though it's cool that she's like an Asian girl that's also traveling and free-spirited and independent-minded like myself. But I was just too practical. And I was like, I put the kibosh on that. And I was like, yeah, go back. But somehow I just found myself like texting her still or calling her on the phone. Yeah, but I didn't put those two together until like much later on. Yeah.
So how long was it until you guys get married?
It was like 5 years. It was a long time. We were friends for a long, long time. Yeah.
Okay. And so then you guys get married. Tell us what happened.
Yeah. So when I met her, one of the first things that she shared with me was that she had cancer. That was actually like the third thing she shared. So that's a pretty crazy thing, is like, you're meeting someone for the first time, they say their name, they say where they're from, they say their age. Okay, that's basic stuff. Most people actually don't even share their age, but that's pretty personal already for a girl. And then she shared she had cancer, so I was like, well, this is like way too much, right? But she was already engaged already before I met her.
Someone else?
Yeah, to somebody else.
Wow.
And so she told me, like when I asked her, oh, like, what are you doing out here? She told me that, you know, she had just broken up and gotten out of this relationship with somebody. And so these are one of the things that unfurled during the car ride, was that it turned out that everyone in our road trip had been previously engaged.
Except you.
No, everyone in our car.
You were
yes,
engaged?
I was also previously engaged.
Oh, that's a different
Yes,
story. Okay.
yes, we were all previously engaged, but this is completely random.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I don't think that was random. It was meant to be.
Yeah, so it was meant to be, right?
Wow.
Like, Anna had previously been engaged and she had broken up with her boyfriend, so she took some time off. But when I met her, I didn't know she was engaged. I just knew, like, she had just broken up with somebody, right? And then when I found out during the course of the road trip, as we were sitting in the car, that she was just previously engaged, I was like, oh, dude, this dude broke up with her because of cancer. He couldn't go through with that. Yeah.
Wow.
And then that's when everyone started sharing their own, like, disengagement stories, you know? Like, it was a crazy trip. Yeah.
Tell us about your previous engagement.
That one was pretty silly and stupid. I say it's stupid more than silly. That one was actually my first official relationship.
Okay.
I'm sure I've had like a lot of relationships where people might have wondered or assumed that we were in a dating relationship, but because I never formalized anything, to me we weren't officially dating partners. So the first time that I had a girlfriend actually wasn't until post-college. And that was a person that I proposed to. And it had just reached the point where to me, it was like, well, we've been going out for a while. I think it's time for me to propose, because where else is this going if we don't get married, right? But it didn't work out. She actually broke up with me.
How long were you guys together before you proposed?
Maybe like 4 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So this girl, once again, I think I had come back from grad school. And I was like, oh yeah, there's this one girl, and she's pretty, and she's in town, and I want to get to know her more. But it wasn't because I wanted to date her. I just wanted to get to know her more. And she was like the one person in town that I didn't really know, right? Amongst mutual groups of people. And so after our second hangout, she asked me like, do you like me, right? And I was like, yeah, I like you as a friend. And then that's where I saw the fork. We were eating spaghetti. I think it was like at Olive Garden. And that's where the fork was like, huh? And then I saw it, and I was like, oh, I shouldn't have added that, right? I was like, oh my God, she was like expecting me to like ask her out or something like that. And the crazy thing after that, so I was like, oh, I blew my opportunity. So she was like, okay. And then she grabbed the bill, she ordered the bill, she grabbed the bill, and she was like, split it, and that's the end of the night.
Never to be seen?
Yeah, never to be seen again. So I thought, but we both pull out and we walk out to the parking lot. Such an awkward walk because we parked right next to each other. It just so happened that we parked next to each other.
Was that on purpose?
No, because she got there first, right?
Ah.
And it just so happened that we parked next to each other. Then we pull out. I pull out first because I was like, I gotta get out of here, man. I'm gonna back out. Like, this is just too awkward. Like, this is I put myself in a silly situation.
And I guess you're being your neighbor.
No.
Okay. That would have been wild.
But I do go home with her later. So here's what happens. I pull out of the parking lot. I make the turn out of the exit, and I was like, what was that? Was that like, I look back and I see smoking. So some guy had ran the red light, and then basically hit her.
Damn.
Yeah, so as we pulled out of the restaurant, I was like, oh man, I missed my opportunity. And then she got into a car accident. So I could have just continued driving off, right? Because I saw it in the rearview mirror.
But you have to play the hero.
Yeah. So then that's how I ended up back at her house, because her car was like totaled, right?
Did you make a move then?
I did end up making a move like a couple weeks later. I was like, okay, well, I've got a second chance. Do I really want to go out with her? And there wasn't anything that was saying no. So I was like, I'm going to go out with her because she likes me and she's pretty. And so I'm going to go out with her. And so that's kind of how we ended up in a relationship. Yeah.
So what made the relationship not work?
I think there were cultural differences.
Where's she from?
She was from like Central Asia.
Oh,
So
like Kazakhstan, those places?
yeah, Central Asia's, and then so there's a difference between East Asia,
Yes.
Central Asia, Southeast Asia,
Big time.
South Asia. There's all these people that are technically Asian, but their cultures are very, very different, and myriad differences between all these people
Yes.
groups. And so these cultural differences were like really big that over time just really made it difficult. And it wasn't even just that, because I had a pretty good relationship with her friends and her family as well. But it was also just personal clashes. Yeah. So, I mean, I would say the cultural differences compounded the lack of understanding or led to misunderstandings, but it was more personal differences. Yeah.
Okay, so now back to Anna. So you said she told you straight away that she had cancer?
Yeah. Yeah.
How did you react?
I was like, okay. I just let her talk. Because she seemed like she had, like I told you, when she walked up those stairs, as she exhaled and breathed out from the cold, wintry, icy air in Iceland, somehow as she exhaled, the rest of the room, like whatever was in that atmosphere, like she sucked up, and everyone kind of just like looked that way. And so she really filled up that room. And so she was on a train, not of thoughts, but a train of speech. So I couldn't stop her, but in my mind I was like, wait, did she just say she had cancer? Well, I guess she did say she had cancer, but she said it in such a flow, so naturally, and it wasn't like, yeah, I have cancer, my doctor said this, and so I'm not sure what to do, and so I'm here traveling. It wasn't like that. It was just like, just like someone might say, yeah, I have a master's degree in urban planning, and I went to school here. She was like, yeah, I just celebrated my birthday and I have cancer, so now I'm traveling here. It was just like that. So it didn't give me room to ask her further in depth about her like health situation. It was just, she stated everything and laid it out clearly for me that I really had no questions to ask except, who is this girl that is so open and so direct with her line of speaking with a stranger?
Wow. So looking back at your relationship with Anna, what is the most important lesson that you learned through being with her?
Is to really value time.
Yes.
Yeah, I think for us, like she passed away during the pandemic period, not from COVID, but because everyone was so afraid of this like nefarious disease that might strike them and people stayed at home, we had to run a town to ourselves. And because at that stage, she was already in a point where the cancer was getting worse, she has that like live and live once mentality. So we went out when everyone else was in, and so we had all these parks to ourselves, we had no traffic going to anywhere. And so that taught me to really value time. So even though it was really short, it felt like it was so much longer because we had all this time to ourselves. And it's not like we were on our phones separately but together. We were actually doing stuff together. We were having conversations this whole time because we got married without dating. We didn't go from boyfriend, girlfriend to marriage. We went straight from friends to marriage.
Wow.
So we had to figure out the questions you would normally ask of your dating partner in the dating phase. We didn't actually get to those questions until we got married. And so the depth was just really deep because we weren't afforded the opportunity because of these lockdowns to hang out with anybody else. So we only had ourselves. And because the work was light at this time, everyone was figuring out how to do remote. We had very little responsibilities and obligations to other people. And so that really taught me to value time. So now when I travel, because I had traveled so much previously in my life, I don't normally travel to go sightseeing anymore. Like those sites don't really capture my imagination anymore. I really just travel to visit people. That's kind of the main thing. Yeah.
Wow. So just like you said, there's a saying that says, it's not a number of years, but the amount of life and the years that matters.
Yeah.
I think it was Alexander the Great that said that. Because he passed about 32.
Yeah, he's pretty young, yeah.
He said, I've lived enough in my life to 25 lifetimes. So wow, how long were you guys together?
Only like a year, for marriage?
Yeah.
Only like a year and a half, 2 years, very short. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was her, I remember she was like, I just want to live till like this year, so it's like, so I can say we were married 3 years, kind of. Because it spanned 3 calendar years. But yeah, she passed away just like on the other side, I think, of one of the years. And so, but I remember even like at the hospital, it wasn't her deathbed because I pulled her out of the hospital because I didn't want her dying in the hospital. But I remember the nurse came in and the nurse asked Anna, like, well, how long have you guys been married? And she's like, honey, how long have we been married? And I was like, oh man, I was like 2 years. And then that's when I was like, wow, I'm not even married like 2 years. Like barely 2 years. But it felt so much longer. That like 1 year felt like 2 years. And 2 years, and 2 years felt like 3 years, yeah.
What do your parents think? Were they supportive? Or were they saying, what are you doing?
I didn't tell my parents actually about her disease. Because when I brought her home, like that was our plan actually. If I had one regret, it would have been to stick closer to the plan. But basically the first time my parents and my family met her, it was to share, not because at that point they knew we were going out because they said, hey, I have a new girlfriend, or this is my only girlfriend, that is, because I only had one other official girlfriend, which was the previous engagement. So we went back to my parents' house to share, supposedly, that was the plan.
To share that you guys are going to get married, or that she has...
Kind of both.
Okay.
And we ended up not sharing about her health status because I was like, they're so happy, I don't want to ruin it. But we we should have shared it, and we intended to, or I intended to. And so she actually asked me when we came back to my house, I was like, hey, like, I thought you were going to share with your parents. Like, what was the whole point of the trip if we went back and you didn't tell your parents about me? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I just felt like they were so happy. I didn't want to ruin the moment. And that's, you know, a legitimate thing. But then my family was just not prepped by the time I told them a few months later. I didn't tell them until after the wedding. And I didn't tell them, I don't think I told them until like the pandemic hit.
Wow.
Yeah. Just because it was so, things were so busy, I just didn't have that good time. And actually no one even of my friends, right? Because we met in Iceland, we didn't have mutual friends. Even though we've been friends for like a long, long time. But none of my friends knew about her cancer status. Because she was very pretty. And it's not like she was walking around sporting a bald head, you know?
Yeah.
So no one knew that she was doing all these activities and all these service projects with cancer the whole time. No one had any reason to think any worse. So yeah, I mean, that's one that really shocked my family, was they just couldn't understand how a girl so young like that could have cancer, and how I could marry someone like that with cancer. Yeah.
Wow, that's such a sad story, man. I feel for you. I know that she's in the best place now. She's always with you in your heart. She's like you, she is in yours, and vice versa. I know it's so hard. Wow. How did you handle that when you realized that this is more serious than?
Yeah, so I didn't because I didn't know anything about cancer, even though once again she shared that she had cancer the first time we met. I didn't know anything about cancer. It's not like I went up and like, okay, cancer, blah, 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 like treatments.
What type of cancer she had?
She had breast cancer.
What stage?
So here's the thing, I didn't know there were stages to cancer. So I thought when you had cancer, that was the death knell, death sentence right away. So I did not know that there were stages until after we were engaged, but before we got married, like by a month, she got like the metastatic diagnosis. And yeah, so I don't know anything about cancer, but I'm just naturally, like, I just know my words. So I was like, meta means everything. And I'm like, wait, does that mean it's everywhere? And it's no longer just in stasis, but it's like everywhere? So then I had to go back and look that up. And as I was scrolling down the stages, I was like, oh my God, there's like multiple stages. And what she had described to me in the past, without using technical terms of the stage numbers, what she had described as her condition in her past before we met, when I encountered that description, I was like, oh my God, she was like pre-cancer before I met her. And even when I met her, she was like stage 1, essentially, in Iceland. And so I was like, oh my God, like...
It's very aggressive.
Yeah, it turned super aggressive, super fast. And here's the thing is that I didn't let my knowledge of her cancer status ever affect me from having a relationship. It was more the practical matters, that long distance, you know, how is this going to work? Because I told you, the cultural differences of my previous relationship.
So long distance, you mean you guys were not even in the same city?
No, we weren't even in the same like state.
Where was she living?
She was from Pennsylvania.
Also,
Yeah, and I lived in California. Yeah. So that's why I never considered a relationship. I was like, how are, you know, like, what are we gonna do?
From the outside, everything was pointing towards this is not gonna work. But there's this uncontrollable force called destiny, whatever.
Yeah.
That will bring you together despite all the odds.
Yeah.
And would you say that the cancer is actually, ironically, the thing that really brought you guys even closer together?
Yeah, I would say so, because here's the thing, right? Like this was before I found, to answer your question, the answer comes before I found out and learned about the different stages of cancer. But she was undergoing a procedure on her brain using radiosurgery, which is basically beaming lights of laser to zap and eliminate these cancer spots. So as I was reading about that, that's when I was like, it looks like it's okay. She says it's going to be okay. She's always very calm about everything. So I was like, okay, well, this is just the first stage of a more major treatment plan, right? So the calculus that went into my head was that, oh man, like, what if this treatment option doesn't work? And I already knew, like, when she said she had to get laser to the brain, it was serious. Because, like I told you, once again, I was a bad student, right? I started off as molecular biology and I couldn't hack it. So after 2 years, I was like, I'm changing to another science. I'm going to political science. But I knew that the blood-brain barrier was something super important and effective. And so if the cancer had moved up to her brain, it's really bad. No matter how efficient and effective this procedure is, to have it spread into the brain is really bad. So I thought, like, what if she dies, right? And one day I just no longer hear from her. We stop talking. I have no idea. That would scare me. Like, and what if it's because she got into a relationship with somebody else, or like that? Because we had no mutual friends. So I was like, that would be horrible if she dies and I never know. And no one ever tells me because no one has my phone number from her friends or her family. But what if, even worse, she no longer talks to me because she's in a relationship with somebody else? That would be pretty bad too, because it's just the same. The end result is I can no longer have this relationship with her. And then what's even worse is that she gets in this relationship with this other person and she survives and lives a normal life span.
Yeah.
That would be even worse. So to go back to your question about changing the narrative, I was like, I can change the narrative right now. I've just listed out 3 options, 3 alternates, right? Not alternate histories, but actually alternate future paths.
Yeah.
And I don't like any of those. So why am I worrying about the what if, right? Like Marvel has this what if series, like combining and amalgamating 2 different characters together with 2 different backstories into some completely new one. So I'm like, why do people spend all this time on these fake stuff when I can fix something real right now? Maybe I can't fix her physical situation, but I can fix our relationship. So that, yeah, so it's not a situationship, right? And so that's
it's your own business, right?
Yeah. So that's where I was like, I want something more out of our friendship because we've already had a deep level of friendship. And so this is why I was like, of these 3 options, she dying and I never know about it because no one contacts me. She gets into a relationship. She tells me, we can't talk anymore because now I'm in this relationship, and then I have to hope for them to break up. But then the 3rd option, they never break up, they end up getting married, and I still can't talk to them. That's even worse. But I can change all of this by marrying her right now, so that if she dies, I know no one else gets to marry her, and I have the potential of being married to her for the rest of our lives. So that was the calculus that was in my head, and that's the one where I was like, I'm going to make this happen right now, so these other things don't happen. And that was before I found out about the different stages of cancer. That was before we found out that she was in stage 4.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So all these decisions I had already made prior to her diagnosis of this stage.
So when did you find out that she was in stage? So you said in the
Like-
beginning she was pre-cancer,
Mm-hmm.
and then once you get married, so like, it was kind of 2 years?
Yeah, so we found out a month before we got married. And so she actually pushed off her treatments because most girls want to keep their hair and they want to look beautiful for their wedding day. And I was like, no, like, let's just get you started on the treatment, I was like, you can't lose that much hair.
You can get married later,
Yeah. But at that point, we already knew it was going to be treatment for life. We knew it was going to be chemo for life. But once again, I already thought she was on chemo because I thought every cancer patient was that's your first and only option was chemo. I didn't know that was like the final phase, right? And so even before we got married, I thought she was on chemo because even though we're talking about cancer right now, it was never the crux or the center of any of my decisions. It was just something in the background. Just like I might have like a mole on my back or a zit on my nose today, like it was just something that she had. That's her perception of it. Because that was her perception of it. What was conveyed to me was that it's something that I have, but it's not something that is life altering for her. Yeah.
Did you guys talk about kids?
We didn't talk about kids until after we got married. So now my major advice is if you're ever considering like marriage, like talk about kids before you get married.
Sure.
But she actually wanted kids and I didn't want kids, but I didn't know that she wanted kids and she didn't know that I didn't want kids.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I was basically able to say, hey, let's just get you through this treatment first.
Yes.
And you know, it doesn't make sense to get pregnant while you're getting like radiation, right?
Absolutely not.
And so she agreed with that. And then it got to the point where the chemotherapy kind of took its toll on her, and we just kind of like stopped talking about it gradually. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
When did she pass away?
A couple years ago. No, not a couple years ago. 4 years ago now.
Which month?
Like 4 years ago. Yeah, just like
Exactly.
4 months ago. Yeah. So actually, I published my book almost to the day of her anniversary of her passing. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it's almost to the day. I wasn't planning it to be like that, but it just so happened that I think by the time it got uploaded, it was like a week after. I think it would have been the day of, but like I didn't know this, but when you upload your ebook to like Amazon and these other platforms, they have to verify you first. They have to verify your identity, your bank accounts, and who you are, and they have to verify the work and the content as well too. But it so happened that I uploaded it like the day after the anniversary of her death, and then a week later, like it got published online. So yeah.
Wow. What is the title of the book?
It's called Attraversare, and I have to say it that way because if I say it with an American accent, it makes no sense. But attraversare is an Italian word, and I pulled that word from the movie Eat, Pray, Love. And there's a scene in Eat, Pray, Love where Julia Roberts' character is talking to this other Italian man, and he comes up with this word. I think it's called like attraversiamo, and I found that word really hard to pronounce. Going through. Yeah. So I found another word. I'm a traveler as well as an urban planner, so walking through, going through, passing through. So I was like, you know what? I can write a better story than this, because meeting randomly in Iceland, falling in love with someone who has cancer, getting married. I mean, that's your romantic tragedy, right? So I was like, after I watched this movie, I watched this movie actually after she passed away, because I was sitting at my parents' house, which is another thing what Anna told me was like, don't go back and live with your parents. And I ended up living back with my parents. But I was watching this movie, and Anna actually did an Eat, Pray, Love journey herself too, where she went to Thailand to a monastery, went vegetarian, and tried to do all these things, right? And it didn't work out for her. But after I saw that movie, I was like, I can write a better book than this. I already have elements of it. I just need to edit it. And so I chose that word, attraversare, because it's about passing through and going through. So we're just like travelers passing through this world.
Yeah.
And we're going from one place to another place. And so that's why I chose that title. And so yeah, it was inspired by, my book is not inspired by Eat, Pray, Love, the story, not at all. But the title gains the inspiration from this phrase that was spoken in that movie. And so another reason I chose it is because I just thought it was an exotic enough sounding word where people would be like, your reaction right now is like, oh, what does this mean? I want to go beyond this title word and look into this first page to see what the story actually is all about. Because if you just see that word, attraversare, you're not going to have any idea what it is. So I'm a bad publicist, and maybe it's going to backfire on me. But when I started writing the story, even before I started compiling and writing it, I already knew that this word was going to be the title of my story. And so, I mentioned I had changed from being a molecular biology major to a political science major. Even when I wrote papers in political science, I never had titles. The title was the last thing that I wrote in my paper. The conclusion was the intro and the conclusion were the second and third last things, and the very last thing was the title. But for this book, the title, the word, was something I immediately had right off the bat. And it was a placeholder for the longest time until I got to that date where I finished all my edits. And I'm like, you know what? This placeholder name, attraversare, has stuck the whole way. And the more I write, the more I transcribe. I'm like, this is actually a very fitting word for the story. It really is emblematic of kind of the journey that we go through, walking through and passing through. And so, that's what the title means, and the cover image is actually an image of Anna walking through Death Valley. Not figuratively, but literally walking through Death Valley. That's another place we travel to, and so
Where is that?
Death Valley, it's in California.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's what the title of my book is, Atravessare, The Travels of Life. And it's got a picture of her walking through Death Valley. So that's part one. And I guess if you've stuck around to listen this long, I can say the teaser, and there's going to be part 2 and 3. So part 2 would be Atravessare, The Travails of Wife. So the first one is The Travels of Life. The second one is going to be The Travails of Wife. And then the last one is going to be The Triumphs of Life.
Wow.
So it's a 3-parter. I've just finished the first part, but I definitely need to take a break before I embark on any other writing.
Wow, what a story. Wow, thank you for sharing that. So what is the biggest piece of advice you would give to anyone that may be facing the same situation, like with a partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, you're going through something similar?
Yeah, I mean, what I would say, the advice I give is really personalized, right? Like I have a lot of general platitudes when it comes to asking me questions about climate change or politics, right? But personal questions, I give personal responses to. So it would really just depend on the person. Like, I wrote this book with the intent to help people navigate situations that they might be facing, that they're in a similar situation, right? And so that was kind of the intent for this book, is like someone who's navigating something where, they're trying to figure out a dating relationship in the midst of a health issue, or they're trying to figure out a dating relationship in the midst of a distance issue. That's kind of why I wrote the book, was to help people see the challenges that I went through, the travels that I did, the travels that we did, and see how we navigated it. Not to say that the way we did it is a solution to your problem, but here is a template, here is one alternate that you can see how it turned out, right? And for better or worse, it may or may not apply to your specific situation. But that's kind of why I wrote the book. And so my book actually has discussion questions as well, to sort of like bring about those thoughts, to bring about those kind of questions to the forefront, so that if you're not thinking about it, or if you don't have someone to talk about it with, that you're able to answer this question back. The book was really written in mind for the people that are kind of going through similar kinds of life and death issues.
Wow, powerful. Wow, I still can't believe the story, because this is such a touching, not just inspiring, but also goosebump-inducing. So thank you for opening your heart and sharing that with us on the podcast and telling me that the other day. Really appreciate that. We're going to do a part 2 to follow up and go even deeper into that. But for now, let's call it a day. If someone wants to connect with you and reach out to you, what's the best way to do so?
I'm not really big on social media, but I do have social media. I use Instagram. And I do have a YouTube, which is like a personal blog. So my Instagram is Frosty Osty. Yeah, that's my Instagram. That's probably the easiest way to contact me. The YouTube is like really hard to contact. I'm obviously not gonna give my Facebook account.
FROSTY and then Osty, AUSTY.
So FROSTI _AUSTI. Yeah, it's the easiest way to find me.
Alright, I'll put in the show. Listen, Austin, absolute pleasure. Thank you for sharing your story. I salute you, you're truly with a heart. Keep shining your light, keep blessing the world, and keep sharing your gift. That's a very precious gift that you've been blessed with. And share that loud and proud. You worked on the first step, we're just embracing it, and now you're sharing it through your book. Your first book, 2 more to come, and who knows after, podcast, talks, who knows. So this is one of my biggest understandings, that one of the main reasons we're here is to share our gifts with others, so we can all collectively rise. Because all the crap that happens to us, whether it's pain, trauma, abuse, drama, tragedy, sickness, whatever, sure, it's very painful to go to that, but then that becomes your story. Your story becomes your gifts. Your gifts become your daily responsibility to share it with others around you, around the world. So You're at that stage now. You've been blessed with an incredible, incredible gift. It's not just your gift. It's your gift and Anna's gift, both of you. It's incredible. I know she's cheering for you. She's going to be cheering for you for the rest of your forever. Because I know for a fact that you guys were together in past lives. And I know that you guys will be again together in future lives. Maybe that might sound crazy to some, but I deeply believe in that. And yeah, so listen, I salute you. Stay safe, stay awesome. Talk to you very soon. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lorenzo.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Have a great day. God bless, my friend.
Yep.
Take care. We're going to call it today. Cheers.